Aylesbury, the county town of Buckinghamshire since 1725, is an old market town which has experienced rapid expansion over the past 6 decades. The place name Aylesbury is thought to derive from Eagle's Burh, meaning hill town or fort of Eagle. Eagle's identity is uncertain, but a possible candidate is Eagle, the sun archer god of Anglo-Saxon mythology. The remains of an Iron Age hill fort dating back to 650 BC were found in 1985 in the gardens of Prebendal House in the Old Town. In addition, Bronze Age Celts, Romans and Saxons have all left their mark on this area of Buckinghamshire. In 571, Cuthwolf and his army of Anglo-Saxons drove the resident Celtic Britons out of the area. The Anglo-Saxons were ousted by the Danes, who, in turn, were overrun by Edward the Confessor's troops in the 10th century. Almost a century of instability then followed, and it wasn't until after the Norman conquest in 1066 that peace was restored. Aylesbury's prosperity was based on its markets and central position in the county. The first assize court was recorded in 1218, and from the early 15th century, the county's MPs were selected here. In 1554, a grateful Mary Tudor granted Aylesbury its charter in appreciation of the town's loyalty in declaring her Queen of England, despite the claims of Lady Jane Grey. During the English Civil War, Aylesbury was a parliamentary garrison town. At the Battle of Holman's Bridge in 1642, the defence of Aylesbury was led by Sir William Balfour, who defeated the Royalist forces led by Prince Rupert. During the 19th century, Aylesbury developed links with transport networks connecting other parts of the country. The Aylesbury arm of the Grand Union Canal opened in 1814, and in 1839 Aylesbury was the first place in the world to have its own railway branch line. The Great Western Railway built a branch from Prince's Risborough in 1863, and the Metropolitan Railway arrived in 1892. A connection to Buckingham was completed in 1868. In 1899, when the Great Central Railway arrived, Aylesbury was finally on a main line from London to Manchester. The town grew slowly from medieval times until the beginning of the 19th century. The 1811 census recorded a population of 3,447. In 1841, it was 5,414, and in 1901, just 9,243. However, in the 1960s, Aylesbury was selected as an overspill town for Londoners, and a massive housing expansion took place. At the same time, the centre of Aylesbury was extensively renovated and modernised. The population is now almost 88,000 as of 2021 census. The statue next to you depicts John Hampden, an English landowner and politician who represented nearby Wendover in the 1640 Parliament. He opposed the ship tax and was a central figure in the revolution against Charles I. Hampden gained national recognition for his opposition to arbitrary taxes imposed by King Charles I, and was one of the 5 members who attempted arrest of the king, sparking the First English Civil War in 1642. Although there is some uncertainty about whether he participated in the Battle of Aylesbury near Holman's Bridge, Hampden raised an infantry regiment and died from wounds received at the Battle of Chalgrove Field in June 1643 in nearby Thame. Despite his early death, Hampden was considered an important figure in the parliamentary cause, as he was able to hold different factions together. He is regarded as a less complicated figure than Oliver Cromwell or John Pym. His reputation for principled opposition to arbitrary rule made him a popular figure in North America before the American Revolution. Opposite Hampden's statue is a statue of Benjamin Disraeli, who served as an MP for Buckinghamshire in the 1847 elections. Disraeli was born into a Jewish family in 1804, but later converted to Anglicanism. He went on to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom twice, from 1868 to 1874, and then again from 1874 to 1880. Disraeli was a key figure in passing the Reform Act of 1867, which extended voting rights to more people in the British population. He was also a prolific writer and is known for his novels Sybil and Coningsby, which address social and political issues of his time. Disraeli is remembered as an important figure in British political history and literature. William Rickford, a local entrepreneur, founded the old Aylesbury Bank in 1795, which remained the sole banking establishment in the town for many years. The building, erected in 1853, is indicative of the wealth that stemmed from being the only financial institution within a large rural area. Despite the popularity of the Gothic revival, the bank's owners chose an Italianate classical style. The Bucks and Oxon Union Bank was formed in 1853 by 9 partners and had a paid-up capital of £55,000. The bank merged Aylesbury Old Bank into it, as it did with the Olivers and York Bank in 1854. The building that you stand in front of, what was still regarded by the town as the Aylesbury Old Bank, also accommodated the staff on the upper floors. These included the clerks and the branch manager. It is also told that the bank customers, all of whom were persons of means, otherwise they could not have opened a bank account, gave the staff Christmas presents, which came to £2 each, which is about £2,000 in today's money. In 1874, it already had 7 branches in the county. Lloyds Bank acquired the bank in 1902. Lloyds merged with TSB to form Lloyds TSB in 1995. Kingsbury takes its name from the fact that the manor of Aylesbury was owned by the Crown between 971 to 1204, one of 7 in Buckinghamshire. It was later granted to the Earl of Essex. The original manor house was located near the churchyard in St Mary's Square. However, excavations indicate that the area was once an active Iron Age hill fort, with evidence of a large ditch passing through it. Although the Saxon market space may have been in Kingsbury, the medieval period saw a shift in economic focus to Market Square, which became the centre of the town's activity. Despite this, Kingsbury remained a market for centuries and is still used occasionally for special market days. It was likely that Aylesbury had already begun to function as a county town during the Norman period, when the kings maintained a hospitium, probably in Kingsbury. The earliest reference to an inn at Aylesbury comes from the reign of Henry II, 1133 to 1189, during the royal manor period at Kingsbury. Several notable places surround Kingsbury. On the corner of George Street is the Fever and Cirque, also known as the Red Lion pub, which dates back to the 16th century. It is owned by the Elizabeth Emmons charity. It was left as a bequest by Elizabeth Emmon, who specified that it should be used for the benefit of 3 poor and decaying widows, which had 1 husband apiece. The Victoria Club, a social club built in 1877, is located further down on the same side. The Rockwood pub, formerly known as the Lobster Pot, stands on the corner of Pebble Lane and was named after the Roundhead's helmet during the Civil War when Aylesbury was a parliamentarian garrison town. Pebble Lane, previously known as Church Row, still showcases the medieval central drain or kennel. With its pedestrianised and narrow character, Pebble Lane exudes a timeless ambience and provides a charming route leading to the open spaces of Kingsbury and St Mary's Church. It is believed that the central drain allowed women to walk to church without getting their dresses wet. On the right side of the lane, there is a 17th century building previously known as the Forester's Arms, but colloquially referred to as the Flea Pit. It was rumoured that more ale was consumed in the cellar than in the pub itself. Across the lane stands an 1840s water pump, situated at a suitable height to fill water carts. This surviving church pump in Pebble Lane is of historical significance as the only surviving public pump that provided drinking water to the historic core of Aylesbury, dating back to 1840. Further up the lane opposite the Education Sub-Office building, you'll notice some parallel lines engraved on the walls. These were created by pupils of the local school who sharpened their slate pencils for use on their boards. The board consisted of quarry slate fitted in a wooden frame with a slate pencil for writing instead of chalk. Slate had the advantage of being wiped clean and reused, and pupils were required to bring a damp cloth to school to clean their slates. This is the origin of the saying, to wipe the slate clean, meaning to start afresh. The first workhouse in St Mary's Square opened in the 18th century and was operational by 1725, providing job security to inmates. Though the work was hard and wages were small, the children were taught trades and religious education, hence the workhouse's proximity to the parish church. The workhouse accommodated up to 90 inmates who were maintained by the parish, as reported in 1777. This workhouse operated until 1829, when a more spacious one was built opposite the prison, and the current buildings were auctioned off. St Mary's Square has a rich history that belies its tranquil and peaceful atmosphere today. During the 17th century, it served as a hub for charitable institutions, with 3 main establishments located there along with Parsons Fee. When entering the square from Pebble Lane, the parish hall on your left-hand side was once the workhouse. This was where landless peasants who lost access to common land under the Enclosure Acts of 1604 came and sought refuge. These people were initially dependent on the community for alms, and a law passed in 1675 required those receiving alms to wear a special badge. The row of cottages located on St Mary's Square at numbers 3 to 5 are all 17th century buildings. On the north side of the square stands the Derby Arms pub, which has a Georgian frontage that hides an older building. As you walk anti-clockwise around the square, you'll come across these landmarks before arriving at the church path on the west side. A church has stood on this site, the highest point in town, since the 12th century. Rebuilding work was done in the 13th century, which is when the current cruciform shape of the building was created. Over the following 2 centuries, regular extensions were added, and much of the building was re-roofed. Some remnants of the original structure remain, such as the 12th century Norman font, which has since become known as the Aylesbury font, as well as the 15th century west window, which depicts various characters and places from the Old Testament. There is a Saxon crypt under the Lady Chapel. Additionally, there is an effigy of a knight in armour with a lion couchant and a memorial to Lady Lee, the wife of Sir Henry Lee QC, who served as the personal champion of Queen Elizabeth I. It dates from 1584. Red flowers are placed on the tomb to this day. In the chancel is the monument to Sir Francis Bernard, a notable governor of New Jersey and Massachusetts. By the 19th century, however, the foundations of St Mary's were failing, and the entire structure was deemed to be in a dangerous condition. Therefore, in 1850, Sir Gilbert Scott completely restored the church, giving it its current rough-course construction with ashlar enhancements. The present-day church features a generously proportioned nave, which was extensively renovated by the Buckinghamshire Battalion of the County Regiment to serve as a memorial to the fallen soldiers of World Wars I and II. The Latin School was Aylesbury's first grammar school, established in the 16th century by Sir Henry Lee. Originally located in a small chapel attached to St Mary's Church. The school was also endowed with 2 small houses for the schoolmaster's residence, which were situated on the corner of Church Street and the churchyard. Trustees of the Free School, including members of the Haywood and Bell families, were given a substantial opportunity in 1714, when Henry Phillips, a prominent member of the Aylesbury community, left £5,000 for the expansion and enhancement of the Free School. 2 lead rainwater heads on the eastern facade of the Assistant the Master's House bear the date 1719 and the initials HP. The impressive schoolhouse was designed to accommodate 120 boys who would be taught English, Latin, Greek and accounts. It faced onto the churchyard and was flanked by masters' houses on either side, each with 2 floors of 3 rooms and a range of attics. The headmaster's residence, which included parts of the older houses on the site, faced Church Street, while the other smaller house, nearer to Pebble Lane, was home to the usher or Latin master. In 1907, the grammar school moved to new premises on a greenfield site, and the 18th century building was purchased by the Buckinghamshire Archaeological Society to become a public museum for its collections and a residence for the curator Edwin Hollis. The buildings lining Church Street are primarily from the 15th and 16th centuries, although many of their facades were updated in the 18th century. Among these structures, the most impressive is Seeley House, which now serves as the Discover Bucks Museum and boasts a remarkable porch. Aylesbury Grammar School occupied the building from 1720 onward. Originally constructed in the 15th century as a guild hall, Seeley House features a well-preserved roof and medieval wall paintings. The museum features numerous exhibits that highlight local crafts, such as the Aylesbury-built Cubit car, and it is also home to the acclaimed Roald Dahl Children's Gallery. Number 12 has Georgian shop windows, though evidence of a cruck frame suggests medieval origins. Meanwhile, the Georgian facade of number 10 creates an interesting contrast with the Gothic style of number 8, the Chantry, which was added to a 15th century house in around 1840. At the bottom of Church Street, number 1, which dates back to 1739, reveals 16th century origins within its interior. Once the residence of Thomas Hickman, this property and many others in Aylesbury Old Town are still owned by the Hickman Charity, which was established in 1695 and provides housing and other services to older residents of the town. As you stroll down Church Street, an unassuming gate welcomes you to the entrance of the Discover Bucks Museum. You can also access the museum from Pebble Lane, but this is the primary entrance. The museum offers a family-friendly experience, narrating the tale of Buckinghamshire's people and landscapes, spanning from 200 million years ago to the present day. The complex of buildings that now comprise the Discover Bucks Museum resides in an area of Aylesbury that has been inhabited since the Iron Age within a pre-Roman hill fort. It is housed in an impressive listed building dating back several centuries, including a medieval guild hall, a grand private house, a coach house, a Georgian free grammar school, masters' houses, a Latin school, Victorian and Edwardian parish rooms, registrars' offices, a doctor's surgery, and now the museum itself, which has been operational since 1957. The medieval Guildhall was constructed by the Guild of the Fraternity of the Virgin Mary, established in 1450. You can learn more about its story at its dedicated stop. The building to the right of the museum's facade was added in 1796, followed by the coach house, now the Roald Dahl Children's Gallery, around 1800. Within the museum's courtyard, several attractions await you. A particularly surprising sight is a vintage car displayed inside a glass shed. This car, a model 1620, was manufactured by Cubit Engineering Limited in Aylesbury. Although the company was founded in 1919, it produced approximately 3,000 cars before financial difficulties led to its closure in 1925. The company introduced 3 models, the 1620 and in 1925 the K4 and L4. Unfortunately, these latter models did not gain significant traction in the market before the company's dissolution. In the garden adjacent to the wall along Pebble Lane, you will find a statue depicting 3 children engrossed in a book, created by Judy Cowper. This statue commemorates 300 years of William Hardy's charity, which donated 40 shillings per year, equivalent to £5,500 today, to provide coats for underprivileged men and women in Aylesbury, offer apprenticeships to children from disadvantaged families, and supply clothing for these children. The museum continued to be known as the Bucks County Museum until rebranded in 2021 and is now known as Discover Bucks Museum, housing the history of bucks from 64 million years ago to today, and the magnificent Lenborough hoard, the second largest hoard of Saxon silver ever found in the UK. The name Thomas Hickman is prominent in various locations throughout the old Aylesbury area. Aylesbury's first and sole privately endowed charity is known as the Thomas Hickman Charity. Thomas Hickman was born around 1637 and lived at 1 Church Street in Aylesbury, where his cousins and their families would also reside in the following years. He passed away in 1698, after which 5 cottages he had inherited were converted into almshouses. The direction of these almshouses was entrusted to the churchwardens of St Mary's Church. With the sale of land owned by the Hickman family, more properties were acquired in Aylesbury to become almshouses. They were made available to elderly Aylesbury residents in need. The charity is currently the biggest freeholder in Aylesbury Old Town, possessing 49 properties. The almshouses are intended for destitute individuals who are unable to support themselves due to poor health, infirmity, or injury. The applicants had to have resided in Aylesbury for a minimum of 3 years prior to their appointment, have a good character, and regularly attend public worship. The rules were very clear for anyone entering the almshouses in 1867. They must maintain their homes in a clean and tidy state and in good repair at all times. They cannot accommodate lodgers under any pretext without the trustees' permission, nor can they allow others to reside with them. They must behave in a quiet and orderly manner particularly in their attempts to maintain harmony and goodwill with their neighbours. They are expected to attend religious services regularly. As the almshouses are only retained on good conduct, the trustees would feel obliged to evict any occupant who violates these regulations. Prebendal House, situated just past the parish church in Parsons Fee, served as the residence of John Wilkes for a considerable period commencing around 1746. This radical figure went on to become the Member of Parliament for Aylesbury in 1757 and actively engaged himself in numerous local philanthropic and noble causes. However, Wilkes was also associated with Sir Francis Dashwood of West Wickham and the notorious Medmenham monks of the Hell Fire Club. Notably, he possessed a wicked sense of humour and reportedly shocked the participants of a satanic ritual during a wild party by introducing a large baboon clothed as Beelzebub. Wilkes was the founder of the weekly pamphlet called The North Briton, and some of its issues targeted King George III and other influential members of his administration. In 1763, following an especially provocative issue, he was thrown into the Tower of London, but was eventually freed on parliamentary privilege. Wilkes's arrest in 1768 prompted the famous Wilkes and Liberty marches, with over 15,000 people taking to the streets of London in protest. Today, he is remembered as a champion of freedom of expression and personal liberty. Adjacent to Prebendal House lies St Osyth's, a 17th century structure that once served as the farmhouse for the prebendal or church farm. The building takes its name from St Osyth, who was a daughter of Freewold, a Mercian king. St Osyth, born around 650 AD, was a Saxon princess from Quarrendon. Raised by her maternal aunts, St Edith of Aylesbury and Egberga of Bicester, St Osyth aspired to become an abbess. However, due to her political importance, she was not allowed to pursue her dream. Instead, she was betrothed by her father to Sighear, a Christian king from East Anglia, despite having vowed to remain celibate throughout her life. On her wedding day, her husband agreed to her desire to maintain her virginity, and she went on to live in a nunnery near Clacton in Essex, which is now the village of St Osyth's. She was eventually beheaded by marauding Danes, and her remains were moved to Aylesbury, where many miracles were said to have taken place at her shrine. The veneration of her relics caused some tension within the church, and following a papal decree in 1500, her body was moved to a secret location. A religious house was said to have been established in her memory near Parsons Fee. Additionally, a nearby well in Bearton is named after her, and it is believed to have contained an unfailing spring of water. The name of Castle Street suggests that a castle once existed in Aylesbury. While there is some evidence that Aylesbury had a moat and Bailey Castle during the Norman period, 1066 to 1189, it was likely short-lived and built in an area known as Castle Fee. Early manorial records may refer to a castle in Aylesbury, but this could also be a corruption of another word. The word fee in Castle Fee means an area near the castle, typically granted by the Crown. In old documents, the street was called Cat Street, probably a shortened version of Cattle Street, due to the livestock being herded to the market. Castle Street boasts buildings from as early as the 16th century. It was once the primary route into the town centre from Thame and Oxford, and the road was lowered to assist horse-drawn traffic in climbing the hill. As a result, the pavements on either side of the street are elevated. As you stroll along Castle Street, take note of the brown plaques on the western house, number 22, and number 12 on the north side. These plaques commemorate the conversion of these houses into almshouses in 1994 by Thomas Hickman's charity. These houses are relatively spacious for almshouses, with 3 bedrooms and 2 reception rooms. Although the charity was established in 1695, it remains the largest charitable organisation in Aylesbury today. Temple Square is thought to have been named after the Temple Grenville family of Stowe, who owned property in Aylesbury and purchased the manorial rights of the town in 1802. It is the smallest of Aylesbury's 5 central squares, and nearly every building in the square dates from the 17th or 18th century, including the Queen's Head. This area was likely part of the Iron Age, an Anglo-Saxon settlement, and is the most well-preserved section of the medieval and post-medieval town. Historical records indicate that Temple Square once housed a jail from the 12th to the 16th centuries, although the exact location is uncertain. Formerly known as Cordwainers Street or Cobbler's Row, Temple Street is now home to the 19th century building at 7 to 11 Temple Street, commissioned by Nathan de Rothschild. He donated a library and reading room to the town, continuing the tradition of civic patronage. The Literary Club, another gift from the Rothschild family, was established in 1879 to 80 of the town. The entrance to the Friends Meeting House can be found opposite Green End House. Quakers were present in Aylesbury from 1671, although evidence of a Quaker meeting house did not surface until 1680. In 1689, part of Sarah Lambourne's house near Rickford's Hill was registered as a Quaker meeting house in compliance with the Toleration Act. It is believed that in 1703, a newly built house, potentially 9 to 11 Rickford's Hill, was registered as a meeting place, and in 1704 the land was acquired for £8 to construct the current meeting house on a 1,000-year lease. The meeting house was in use from 1727 to 1836, and for the following century it served various purposes, including as a Baptist chapel. However, in 1933 it was reopened for Quaker worship with the guidance of Walter Rose, a renowned carpenter and author from Haddenham. Whenever Aylesbury is mentioned, people reply, "Oh, ducks!" In the town itself, the Aylesbury Duck has lent its name to many public houses and locations. It is central to the heritage of the town. As early as the 1690s, ducks were being farmed in Aylesbury. They were selectively bred from a domestic duck, known as the English White, becoming known as the Aylesbury Duck. This pure breed is characterised by its pale pink beak, white plumage, and bright yellow feet. The pale pink colour of the beak developed because of the grit that they were fed, which is characteristic of the Aylesbury area. Sometimes similar ducks with yellow beaks are mistakenly named Aylesbury ducks, but these are, in fact, a commercial cross between the Aylesbury duck and the Peking duck. Beatrix Potter's foolish but much-loved Jemima Puddle duck is based on the breed. The Aylesbury duck fattened up quickly, was very large, and had the benefit of laying their eggs in November. Consequently, their meat came onto the market from February onwards, after the close of the game season, but before the earliest spring chickens were on sale. In the early 1800s, almost everybody who lived at Duck End, where Millway now runs, bred Aylesbury ducks. The fertilised eggs would be brought to the town, and the new ducklings would be reared in their homes. They were popular for both their meat and white feathers as a filler for quilts. Wealthy people in London provided the main market for the duck trade in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Before the train line was built in 1839, breeders walked their ducks 40 miles to London. They made overnight stops along the way at inns, which had large yards built specifically to house the flocks. In the mornings, once the herders were rested, the ducks would be walked through a cold tarry solution and then sawdust. These shoes protected their feet along the rough road to London. By the 1860s, the duck rearing industry, which had become highly profitable, had begun to move out of the town to the surrounding villages where larger flocks could be maintained. A fourfold increase in the cost of duck food and competition from other duck breeds from 1873 were undercutting the price of the Aylesbury duck. World War I effectively put an end to this cottage industry as the demand for luxury foods fell. Shortage of duck food during World War II effectively dealt the last blow to the farming of the Aylesbury duck. Recently, however, farmers have made a determined effort to re-establish the breed, and several restaurants in Aylesbury and around the Buckinghamshire area now serve Aylesbury duck. The King's Head, a 14th century building, is a popular destination for visitors. It is situated off the Market Square and can be accessed through a narrow cobbled alleyway. Originally a monastery guest house, it has been an inn since the 15th century. The archway leading to the picturesque cobbled stable yard is wide enough for coaches to pass through. A section of the inn's wall has been uncovered to show its wattle and daub construction. One of the most impressive features of the ancient inn is its large Tudor window, which has 20 lights and contains fragments of 15th century glass. The heraldic devices on the glass include angels carrying shields with the coats of arms of Prince Edward, killed at the Battle of Tewkesbury, as well as scenes depicting the marriage of Henry VI and his queen, Margaret of Anjou, in 1445. It is believed that the king and his bride stayed at the King's Head during their honeymoon. The bowhun swan depicted was the symbol of the House of Lancaster and is also the county's symbol. The inn has also hosted other historical figures, such as Henry VIII and hanging Judge Jeffreys. The Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, stayed at the inn after the Battle of Worcester in 1651, and his chair is still on display. The bar of the inn was once the great hall of the medieval manor house of Aylesbury, which occupied the north side of the Market Square. The Market Square in Aylesbury has a rich history that dates back to the 16th century. The square was once a bustling hub of activity, home to 31 inns in and around the town centre in 1577, and by the 1870s the number had risen to 87. Over time, the square has shrunk due to encroaching construction around the periphery. At one time it was surrounded by slaughterhouses, butchers, a tannery and shoemakers. Today, the square has lost most of its historic buildings, but still retains paved footpaths and stone sets. The clock tower, completed in 1877, is at the centre of the square and thought to stand on or close to the original Guildhall site. The Vale of Aylesbury, with its fertile loam, was ideal for farming and husbandry. From 1204 until the end of the 20th century, there was a twice-weekly sheep, pig and cattle market in the square. The many ponds and waterways in the Vale supported the development of the Aylesbury duck, a local speciality. The pure white duck, with a flesh-coloured beak and bright orange legs and feet, was valued for the richness of its flavour by chefs. In the Market Square, visitors will also find the statue of Charles Cavendish, Lord Chesham, who represented Aylesbury in Parliament as an MP and later in the House of Lords after inheriting his father's title. On the corner of Walton Street is The Bell, a 16th century building with later additions. In the 1930s, It was a Trust House motorists' hotel. Although Market Square has undergone many changes over the years, it remains a significant part of Aylesbury's history and a popular destination for visitors to the area. The old County Hall, situated on the southeast side of the Market Square, was designed by local architect Thomas Harris in the Palladian style, following a design competition supervised by John Vanbrugh. Its construction began in 1725, but due to funding difficulties, it was not completed until 1740. Originally intended to be a new prison, the decision to include the Crown Court in the building cemented Aylesbury's position as county town. A door, which is now a window, on the left side of the building led to the prison that housed a treadmill operated by prisoners to pump water around the town. Many of the prisoners in the 19th century were debtors, and those affected by the mechanisation of agriculture were held there awaiting deportation to Australia. The central doorway led to the offices of the Clerk of the Peace, while the large doors on the right opened to the two Crown Courts. Some famous trials, such as those of the great train robbers and Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, were held in these courts. Public hangings used to take place from a balcony outside the central window of the court until the 1840s. The last execution was witnessed by around 10,000 people, and one of the most famous murderers to be executed in the Market Square was John Towell, who was the first criminal to be caught using the new telegraph invention after he fled Aylesbury by train following his murder of his mistress. The courtroom was featured in the Miss Marple film Murder Most Foul, released in 1964. The BBC courtroom drama Judge John Deed is also filmed here. The Crown Court moved to the Magistrates' Courts building in March 2018. The Corn Exchange is an elaborate building located adjacent to the Crown Court in Aylesbury. It was built in 1864, replacing a previous market house that had been used as offices by the Borough Council towards the end of the century. The Corn Exchange was a vital building in most towns in England by the beginning of the 19th century, where farmers and grain merchants would barter and set grain prices. The Arches and Corn Exchange building was constructed in 1865 in a Jacobean style as an addition to the earlier Palladian-style County Hall by David Brandon for the Aylesbury Market Company, funded by a group of local businessmen with a capital of £18,000. The ornate doorway under the arches provided entry to the market hall, and the cattle market was located at the back with access from Exchange Street. The building was sold to the Aylesbury Urban District Council in 1901 for use as a town hall after the corn prices fell during a period of agricultural depression. A severe fire in 1962 heavily impacted both buildings, leaving only a fragment of the Corn Exchange. A memorial for David Bowie is located within the arches of the old Corn Exchange. Bowie debuted two of the most iconic albums of the 20th century, Hunky Dory in September 1971 and The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars in January 1972 at Friars Aylesbury. After the September 1971 gig, he formed the Spiders from Mars in the Friars' dressing room. Bowie also referenced Aylesbury Market Square in the first line of the opening track of the Ziggy Stardust album, 5 Years, pushing through the Market Square, so many mothers sighing. Additionally, Bowie's worldwide fan club was based in Aylesbury. The Green Man pub, located on Market Square, became known for its prime location near County Hall and its association with executions. While not particularly noteworthy, some spectators paid a premium rate to view hangings from the balcony of the pub. Prisoners convicted of other crimes were also punished by being whipped while tied to carts as they were hauled to the top of the square and back. For a different type of entertainment, visitors could walk through an arch on the side of the pub to the building behind it, which was the Market Theatre. Initially opened as a cinema in 1911, the venue was rebuilt in 1924 as a larger space after a fire destroyed the original building. It continued to serve as a cinema until World War II, when the Ministry of Food took ownership and stripped it of its fixtures. After the war, it was restored as a performance venue, attracting famous performers like Genesis, The Who, Roxy Music, David Bowie, and Ronnie Barker. The building went through 3 name changes and is now known as the Borough Assembly Hall, but in 1980 it was demolished to make way for the Hale Lee Shopping Centre. 2 remarkable sculptures situated in front of the Crown Court deserve special attention. The 2 recumbent lion statues, one alert and the other sleeping, stand on either side of a statue of Charles Compton Cavendish, 3rd Baron of Chesham, a Boer War veteran. The name A. de Rennes is embossed on the sculptures. Antoine de Rennes, 1822–97, founded an iron and bronze foundry in Paris, which was active from 1847 to 1930. It seems that the lions are replicas of a pair of lions crafted by Antonio Canova in 1792 for the tomb of Pope Clement XIII in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. In 1888, the lions were gifted to Aylesbury by Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, and, according to rumours, they were transported from Waddesdon on steam wagons. To determine the ideal location for the lions, a replica was created and moved around Market Square until the best position was found. At the heart of Aylesbury's Market Square stands the Town Clock Tower. It was funded through a public subscription after Acton Tyndall, the Clerk of the Peace for Bucks, presented the town with a clock in 1848, having purchased the lordship of the manor. The foundation stone was laid by Mrs. Henrietta Tyndall, and the tower was unveiled in 1865. The market square was traditionally the centre of trade in the town, with markets still held there weekly. The previous market house on the site included a ground-level open market and an upper chamber for town meetings and collection of stallholders' fees. However, this building was demolished in 1866 and the clock tower was built 10 years later. Designed by local architect D. Brandon in the Gothic Revival style and constructed of local stone, the clock tower stands on a raised platform and includes a spire. It has been used as a platform for important speeches in the past. Although the horse troughs originally placed adjacent to the tower have been removed, the clock tower remains a prominent and historic feature of Market Square.